Hello, once more. Now in today's tutorial, Ian and I are going to try to sort about four things. The first thing we're going to be looking at are the curriculum areas that his particular project is going to be used to get him into with the children. In this case it's science. He wants to have a scientific bias to the work. The second thing, I want to try to help him explain to colleagues, because colleagues are interested to share in this, just what kinds of contribution some drama strategies might make to this work in science. The third thing I'm going to do, of course, is check his homework, because I gave him a test last night which was to limber his own dramatic imagination as he read a piece of text. So I shall be seeing if he's done that. Then I want to discuss with him how the point of view by which children enter the drama affects the kind of learning and particularly the kind of language they use in getting that learning. And lastly, I want to show him the difference between drama and literature, how episodes work in a totally different way, because frequently people do link drama and literature together, and they are quite different art forms. So that's what we hope to do. Now the first thing I want to look at with you, Ian, is drawing of the brain. I'm sure you'll recognise that it's a brain and the two parts of the brain. And I'm going to use notes here so that I try and get it, not because I'm telling you anything you don't really know, but I'm trying to bias it towards how you'll explain drama to colleagues. Now you see, you and I know, and so does everybody else that I've ever met, know that we live our lives thinking and feeling simultaneously. And that we enter all social events with a point of view already established. So that point of view, you know, I'm coming into the bank to get money, might be my point of view. Or I'm coming into the bank to give them some, to store it away. So we always have that. We can't exist without it. And that is what creates our investment in the particular social event we're entering. So, of course, if we want to use it in school, we have to artificially create that investment in such a way that it feels truthful to the children. So you see, to get investment, we've got to work with the right side of the brain, which is that part related with making connections that add up to feelings. Making connections between things that on the face of it might look very dissimilar. But you want to get into your curriculum areas, which look very square when they're written down there. So, of course, you have to move for the actual knowledge getting and retention into here. But the context for needing the knowledge in the real world always comes because we live in feeling. And we draw on knowledge to support that feeling. Now, school has, of course, artificially divided this. It seems to be about, let's get as much information as we can, but people don't hold it. How much of the information you spent hours getting in school do you use? How much can you recall? And so on. Very little of what I actually memorized, I recall, and I wish I'd recalled more, but it wasn't placed in a form that I could, because there was hardly a context. Now, the normal context applying in school is, you are a student having come here to learn. I am a teacher who will nurture this learning in you as best I may. But as long as there's somebody called a student, they will naturally put the responsibility for the learning in the main on the teacher. Now, this means another shift Ian's going to have to make. He's going to have to try to get a laboratory going in his classroom, whereby feeling in context is regarded as very sensible, a very sensible way to keep your information moving and being used and stored and so on. Now, to do that, He requires the laboratory because in the laboratory we care about what we do, we get the information we require, and we share it all the time, and that means we process it. We process it in talk, we process it in action, just like a laboratory outside school works. So in drama then, we are saying, we, the whole class, you and your class, are going to enter other people's lives. And the particular aspect of their lives you're going to enter is the point of view.
Right.
And it is the point of view that creates the tension, always. Because this is where our investment is. I've got to deal with it. Because with this point of view, I've got to. It's that kind of energy we're trying. So we're trying to make concern serve the interests of the academic curriculum. And in a way, that's what you're going to have to try and discuss with your colleagues. There are no high-flown, fancy descriptions for it that will ever convince them. You know, drama does this and drama does that. Drama offers the opportunity for a context and some concern to light up the information. And the information is very important. We need this knowledge. What we hope is we can get it in a way that helps us to use it.
Yes.
So that is what I would tend to say to you if your colleagues say, well, why do you have to go through all this rigmarole Dorothy Hethcote's been telling you about? It's a lot quicker if we could just do what it says in the book.
Yes. Well, yes, that's true. They would say that.
Yes, and of course, in a way, they're right. It does seem very time-taking.
Yes.
And that's something you'll have to sort with your colleagues when you come to work in the school. Now, I keep that image. That particular image suits me because I'm a divergent thinker. I don't want a doctor's drawing or an autopsy photograph of the brain. I need that because the man's face is underneath it. And it could be a woman's face. I mean, I don't mind what sort of face, but I need the human using this. And it's an image that comes all the time I'm planning. I'm saying, but have I got the right and the left sides of the brain involving here so that as the thing processes? Now, of course, may we see your homework? And this is where we'll see, you know, something of how your imagination has functioned. Now, of course, you've got this very complicated paragraph from Rosemary Sutcliffe's book.
Yes.
So, which did you try first?
Well, I tried to look at little bits of it in terms of each of the 6 categories that were there.
Yes.
Perhaps if I can talk about what happened as I did that.
Yes, that would be really helpful.
As I thought about it and read about it, certain things in that text appealed to me more.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Perhaps I can talk about those. The first one that really attracted me was the concept or the idea of tilled land.
Oh, yes. Now, where is that?
It's here. He left his, in his flight through the tilled land and over the moors. Right.
Yes, right.
Now, it's the bit about the blood trail that was left through
on the tilled land. Yes.
And somehow or other that was quite rich for me.
Yes, yes. And did you actually see, or did you hear them? I mean, which was you most dominant?
It was the silence, it was the blood on the tilled land.
Yes. So after their flight, there it was.
That's right.
The blood. So, yes, it's the silent image.
The silent image.
Now, did you find when you did the exercise, silence for you was one way you felt I was better limbered on silence?
Oh, much. I got when I started looking at it, I've got an awful lot on silence.
Yes.
I found sound much more difficult.
Yes. I think we should remind ourselves of this. So, in fact, for you, this was a dominating imaginative process. That's very interesting, isn't it? Now, may I say that with improvement, you can do all 6.
Right.
So, you know, you hadn't a lot of time. I know you've been busy teaching and so on, but that will serve you for years.
Yeah.
Because every time you say, I'll do a bit limbering, I mean, I do this all the time because I can't resist literature. I do it all the time. I say, come on, give yourself 5 minutes and limber up and see which is one still more dominant than the other. But knowing that silence for you at the moment is better developed, that's where you probably find your best work with the children will happen. Because your imagination will function much more fluidly.
Right.
Now, you see, I can, you know, sort of, I'm good at them all. But that's only because I've lived a bit longer, maybe, and I've thought about it more.
Yes.
But you never learn to teach. You only keep on improving, you hope.
Yes.
And, you know,
Yeah.
recognising when you've messed it up. Because teaching's an open skill. Once you can swim, you can swim, you can swim, you can swim. It's a closed skill. You can improve your swimming, but once you know water holds you, you can swim. Teaching, you can never teach because it's open like football. No two circumstances ever arrive in the same way, ever. And that's why it's such a rich
Yes.
job,
Yes.
you know. So, this is your best.
Yeah.
What was your worst?
Well, I have to say, I think that probably the movement or the sounds and the movement were the two I had most trouble with.
Yes, yes.
I could see them in terms of what was obviously there.
Yes, but they didn't leap instantly when you were putting that twist
No,
on it.
no.
No. Ties in, of course, with what you'd said here, doesn't it? That dance and mime would probably feel to you the most alien as a start at the minute.
Yes.
So, did you say
The movement,
this
yeah,
and this?
and the sounds
And the
as well.
sound, right. So these are something that, you know, I can help you with because I can find some texts
Yes.
that actually, I think I read one to you earlier without realising it was anything to do with this, when I was describing clanging doors.
Yes.
Now, you see, that's one we could go back to
Right.
and say, now that one you could actually learn better on.
Yes.
You see, what this exercise lets you do is work slowly. You can say, come on, brain, come on, brain, I'll read it back, and it's good stuff, so it's worth reading back. You can't use rubbish. And you can keep on till you say, I'm getting a glimmer, or I'm really weary of it, I've got so blocked, I'll
Yes.
move on again. Right, it's like putting 6 different lenses on, and I see them almost as colours, you see. So I say,
Yes.
okay, get the blue one on, and it's darkness.
Yes.
And so all that filters up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had to really work at that, and
Yes.
there were just 2 or 3 words that really attracted me in the text, and I found myself thinking about those more than
Yes.
anything else.
You see, I think this is part of teaching children to read. This is what I mean when I say books read you. You saw blood on tilled land. It read you then. But we think we're in control of the book. But the book is raising up the relevant information in us. And I think the thrilling thing with young children is to do with them what you've just done, you see. Good. Well, you've made a start on that. I shall never ask about it again. I shall assume
Right.
that will continue. Now then, let's have a look at your classroom, because we're going to be looking at how to start. Now, be quite happy that this is the area you want your drama work to try and explode for the children
Yes.
in order to make the gateway to the actual research material that you'll be preparing and getting and wherever you have in your school,
Right.
the actual information. Because I must stress, we are never, well, I'm never discussing drama as a means of escape from information getting. Drama is a means of entering this thrilling world of knowledge and information, as far as I'm concerned. Otherwise, I don't feel I can justify it. You may be entering the knowledge of how the art form works, as for example in theatre studies, but you must enter the knowledge getting, not just the oh, let's all have a gay old time and leave it. Oh, I shouldn't use gay these days, but you know what I mean. Right. So we can survive because we have an invisible blanket which no one has ever seen.
Mm.
The thrilling thing for me is I haven't thought of doing this one, you see, ever. You've brought me a piece of curriculum, as you might say, that's really lovely to work on.
Yes.
That air exists invisibly. This would be the main concept, I suppose.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there we've got this invisible blanket. Because it is a blanket. That's another aspect of the concept,
Yes,
that it protects,
that's
isn't
right.
it? Tell me
Yes.
if I'm wrong.
Yes, it
because
wraps around.
It
and
wraps around, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that you wanted this aspect, that air moves. And when it's moving, we call it wind or breeze or breath of air and so on.
Mm.
There's a load of lovely vocabulary work there. You know, how many words for wind?
Mm. Mm.
And then it's air that makes weather happen. This blanket that makes weather happen. Right. Now, I think before we look at your classroom then, we'd better discuss what amount of time you feel you can, we'll call it spare, because there is this great pressure on time, because teachers have so much to do in very short days, really. Now, time, I think, comes in two stages. One is, what time do I feel I can cope with? And what time can I spare from all the other core subjects and the foundation subjects? Now, I usually say to people just starting, don't spare a lot of time,
Yeah.
you see. Just spare a little bit. So my advice, but you can take it or leave it, it's your classroom and I shall never ask you except to help. I usually say, do 5 minutes and get saved by the bell. Because often in 5 minutes you can sustain at the speed you need to work in drama. You can sustain it long enough for everybody to say, oh, and we just got going, you know, and you say, oh, what a shame. And you've made a formality save the lesson.
Yes. Right.
And that might be just give you that confidence to think at high speed.
Yes. That
You
would
see,
be-
not because I don't think you think at high speed, but in drama there's a very special kind of
Yes.
thinking going
Yeah.
on. Now, I don't know which time of the day you'd be best saved by the bell, knowing your children and your class and the way the school goes. So, what do you think?
Well, I think the most attractive time to be working on that is probably at the end of the afternoon, towards the end of the afternoon, when there's something for the children to perhaps look forward to. If it's
been a fairly quiet, dullish day for them.
Yes, it's different.
Yes.
And it also makes a clear ending. You know, the end of the day is the time when they go. So,
yes.
It would be an opportunity for
Yes.
me to finish on.
Yes, I think that seems very reasonable. And it won't matter much in the beginning if the bell, I mean, I don't know if you have a bell, I mean, whatever you have that says this is time to leave. If you've got an atmosphere working, it isn't destroyed just because a bell clangs through when it's the end of the day. It might be destroyed if you want to continue with it after play, as you might say. You see, does a bell actually ring in your school?
Yes.
Yes, so it's likely to be quite a clanger.
Yes,
Does some child go through with one, or is
well,
it
we have a mechanical
Oh, you've got a
thing
proper one with a oh dear, yes. Right. So what we're saying is, you write the time then
Okay.
that you think you could like to handle.
I mean, I'd like to start, as you say, with a small amount. So
Yes.
if we could have somewhere 5 to 10 minutes, is that a day?
Yeah, you do what you like. You see, 5 to 10 minutes can be extended to 15 tomorrow, if you
Yes.
feel. And are you thinking of that every day?
Yes. I
Yes,
think
so-
I'd rather build up
Yes.
a bit each day than try to make a big thing
Yes.
once a week.
I think you're very sensible, because you've a week of failure to think of if it's been muffed. Or if it's gone in such an excitable way that they think next time they're going to get it even louder, you know.
Yes,
Whereas
yes.
here, every day a bit, slowly wins the cooperative laboratory thing,
Yes.
right?
And I feel happier, I think, if I haven't got to make a big thing of it once a week.
Yes, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure you're right. Now then, what about it? The whole class, do you think you could tackle for 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
I think the whole class would come together anyway at the end of the day.
Yes, they'd be thinking about it, maybe.
And for such a short period of time, I would feel okay about working with them. I mean, it's rescuable, I think.
It is, yes. And getting them into little groups, even if they were like in the way they sit in the classroom, is still a bit of a hassle for just 5 minutes.
Yes.
My advice then would probably be with only, you know, with this time, which actually is quite a long time in one sense, an awful lot can feel like it happened. You might find it better not to disturb them, say, and put them into this little space here. Yeah. I'm sure there's room for them all in there.
Yes, they do. They would do that, perhaps, at the end of the day. Anyway.
Well, when we start planning in the detail, you'll be considering whether, for the way you want to begin, and I'll give you some ideas, but obviously you'd like to use your own, but the way you want to begin might be better by moving them and have them all bunched up, or better to leave them as they are and be able to give them feedback from the blackboard, because it's a nice handy blackboard, is that, for the whole room to be seen, you see. So we know it's going to be the whole group. Now you better tick that, and that keeps reminding me about it. And then we'll move on to the next thing. Now, when we look at your classroom, you see, one of the things that happens in laboratories is they publish. They're constantly making their information openly available to people. Yes. So you've got a big, strong language area that you can get into. Well, I'm sure there's nothing you could teach without it, I don't know, but I'm assuming that you'd be confident to see that this 5 minutes a day, as it gradually extends, is also going to cover quite a lot of your English material. Now, I don't know yet what your English material would be for the age range you're thinking of, and their ability, of course, because that is where they'll start with their English. So from now on, I tend to accept that there's going to be a great load of English work. And some of this English work is going to be written because we are going to publish. Now, there's all sorts of ways of publishing that you need to look at your classroom about. How much can we publish because we display it? And some of this may be artwork, some of it may be graphics, and you know, that interesting mixture between technical drawing and art.
Right.
Some of it will be in written form, some of it will need filing, but it will be published, and some of it will be lectured on, because these children are perfectly capable of giving lectures. And I'm not talking about little talks, stand up and do a little talk. If it is a laboratory, it is of high seriousness, with no gloom. As I keep saying, drama is not gloomy, but it's serious. So if we look seriously now, where we could publish. Now here I see that your colleagues have made the model for you. Have they, are they suggesting this is a general notice board? Or have they just done it?
It would be, it could be a big display area here.
Yes. So you can have control of that with the children. It's theirs, they can do as they like. Yes. And I presume this is another one.
One there, yes.
How do you feel about publishing on windows? Some people don't like it, and sometimes, you know, the public, it looks a mess.
I don't have any strong feelings about that. I'd be quite happy to use that. It's quite light because it's an open area.
Yes. Do these windows come as low as the tables?
They're quite low windows, so they would be...
Could you publish under there a bit, or would they get spoiled by people brushing past?
I've not thought about it, but I guess you possibly could, yes. I mean, it would be...
Yes, because there's a fair amount of space here. Some of this may be high, and then you run into problems of ladders, I know, with children. You can't really publish on your curtains, but there might be a possibility I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Are the curtains flowered really, or are they fairly plain?
No,
They've
they're grey.
Yeah,
colour,
well,
really.
that's quite nice for publishing then. It's just a matter of finding ways to put things up and not swishing them back. Now, in this room, you've got two very good publishing areas. You see, one of the points about publishing is that colleagues, I presume colleagues come in and out
Yes, they
regularly
do.
if it is an open plan. Colleagues can see that thing I thought was just, you know, bouncing about, actually is yielding a vast amount of reference material and a tremendous range of forms of literature, from letters through to books. I mean, there's no reason why they shouldn't be publishing a book. Why couldn't they? And I mean, this is me dreaming forward at the minute. Children of 9 who can deal with this can write a book for 6-year-olds and publish it. And it will teach them what they really know. Because as you know, when you write something, you tend to realise your knowledge. So I feel there's a fair amount of hope for what we can call publishing. Your blackboard is going to be important, at least it would be to me, because I see a blackboard as a resonating thing in a classroom. It is not a note-keeping thing. I mean, we've done that just to remind us.
Yes.
But later we'll be looking at how we make it resonate. So all the time we're planning, will you be thinking now in terms of, you know, I don't mind if your mind wanders off. You'll be thinking about, I could get some travel out of publishing that. This might lead to a recorded discussion that later another group can listen to and make comments towards. This could lead to some letters being written because we need information, or this may lead to some kind of itinerary being made for the things we all have to do before we make a visit, and so on and so on. That is so much part of the way I think that I tend to take it for granted that you'll be there as well, so you just have to keep thinking publish, publish, publish. And of course when we think of publish, we're also thinking of publishing in forms that show our colleagues, as well as the children, that there are times when a rough note has to be published. You don't tidy it up, you keep it like that. And people can make comments on that rough note, and that is also publishing. So we're not thinking of, and now children, we'll all sit down and we'll copy them all out nicely, and then we'll put them up. And that way it'll look nice for any visitors coming in. Visitors should feel a dynamic in this room about our work on wind and weather. And that means the real life work of a real lab is loaded with everything from rough notes to learned journals. So I see no reason why your kids shouldn't be publishing a learned journal if you feel... well, you see, you have to decide in this life whether you work on, I'll see how much further we can get, or whether you work on, well, they won't be able to do that, will they? So we won't even begin. Well, I work on the first. Because it seems to me that's so exciting. Okay, let's just move that to one side. Oh, there's one other thing. Leave it there. That classroom seems to me particularly useful for you getting rid of rank.
Yes.
I do not see a teacher's desk.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't even see a territory, and as a lady I would be worried about my handbag. You know, I mean, you can carry your money in your pockets, but I tend not to have pockets. So I might think, well, I'd have to get an arrangement with these children every September, you know. Can we agree that this little corner is mine? And anything you want to show me that I need to look at later, we'll keep it there. So I'd have to bring myself in probably a little buffet. Or a big orange box.
Yes, yes.
A little orange box or a big orange box would suit me nicely. It's the place where me handbag is, if that's how I feel about it, and it's a place where carefully can be kept things children say, will you keep this, will you look after this, I found this, but also, have we got them all together? Can I borrow these and have a look at them at dinner time?
Yes.
Put them down there. And children begin gradually then to say, I'll just pop it in your box, right?
Yes, I tend to use a bit of the cupboard area for that.
It also seems nicely arranged for manoeuvring, that the children can
Yes.
easily turn around and look at the board, because the board is fixed, I
Yes,
appreciate.
that's right.
Yeah. Now, it also seems to me to give the children access to the board. It doesn't look too high
No.
for the children to write on. So you see, for me, I tend to make the chalk and duster and whatever else you've got there rather available. So that one can say, show us what you mean, give us a... So that this idea of I'm communicating, I'm sharing my idea, and it's a lab. This is what I think. I always do a test with children, because I'm always a guest in a classroom. If you give them a piece of chalk, what happens to our relationship? Do they look like, oh, me? There? You know? Oh, hey, let me get at it, you know? Oh, hey, this is power. You know, where are they at in relation to that? Often sacrosanct area. Now, it doesn't look to me there's any sacrosanct areas you need to undermine
No.
so much,
No,
except the children's own spaces, of
That's
course, which
right.
you will not.
I mean, I suppose I tend to stand by the board for most of the time.
Yeah, well,
so
there's
that,
an authority stance a bit.
Yes.
Yes, you're going to be moving out of there then
yes,
for a
I
while.
need to think
Where
about
do
that.
you sit down? I mean, do you have any chair?
I tend to sit with the children
Where there's a spare
there's
chair.
a spare chair.
Yes, right, that's okay then. Okay. Right, we've looked at that for a minute. Now, when you first start then, and you're going to be saved by this bell,
Yes.
one of the things Ian is going to have to do is consider how to start in such a way that the children don't feel stared at. Because you see, I don't know whether it's to do with our nationality, but then you've got a lovely ethnic mix in your school.
Yeah.
It's very easy for some people to feel horribly stared at. Asian girls can easily feel this. I've noticed when I've been teaching young children that girls can suddenly feel very, very vulnerable. So we want to try and think of a way for Ian to begin where he protects the children from being stared at. Now that means he's got to give them something to look at, something to do. Now the problem with drama is people often think drama is a matter of me talking to you and you talking back to me, and then we'll all get up and we'll do something. Well, I don't see it like that. I see it as first entering the mind to get me concerned through what I do, from which we can all move into the action we require for the doing. So I see drama as having 3 stages, and you can start at one end or the other, it doesn't much matter. Where you begin depends on where you feel the children are at in regard to feeling self-conscious. When they move forward, you want them to be conscious of self, which is totally different. Self-consciousness is on the negative side, but consciousness of self is an awareness that the statement I'm making now is this.
Right.
And that's moved on to the positive. Now, frequently, I give children a task to start ideas off that doesn't make them feel a bit disturbed themselves, but gets this old thing going. So it needs to be something which gets into the right side of the brain that's about concern and is not about what I'd call interrogatory logic. So you see, if I listen on the radio to some of the programmes about teaching, and I ought to get the BBC and do something about it. What would you say, children, makes the wind blow? Is what I'd call interrogatory logic, and they sit there and they know somehow she knows the answer. It's kindly asked. She won't beat us if we don't know. She has no wooden spoon that will be suddenly whipped out and clout us one. At the same time, there must somewhere in her mind be, so we better try and guess. We'll spend some time guessing what she wants, and then the braver, bolder ones of us will either think we've guessed or we think we know, and we'll start. Now that is a nonsense question for drama.
Right.
It has to be one which sort of yammers about and reverberates up and down. And at first, when you start this, you'll feel daft. Because you see, I'm saying to you, don't ever ask what, you never ask why, and you never ask how. Because those are interrogatory questions. Frequently, a statement is probably better, because it can be made in the form of a query that rings about. Now, if you can, we're thinking of sign, you see. Now, there's the verbal sign. I've made a statement. I'll give you an example in a minute. And there might be a movement sign that adds to the statement. And finally, there might be a reference sign on the board. Now, you imagine I'm sitting with a group of youngish adults, all in a subnormality hospital. And I've been asked if I could help them remember something of their past, try and get them back into their past. I know that all of them were brought up near Whitley Bay. Mm-hmm. So I start on about the sea. I don't know if they've actually been to the sea when they were little, and I don't know how long ago they were taken away to live in this place. If I say, and of course I've done some preliminaries, but basically the question I was asking was, you see, I've never understood why God made sand. Now, this has been done in the context of if you were taking your mother down to Whitley Bay, I'm just wondering how she ought to get herself together so that she'll not be cold. So I've just been wondering. So they said, oh, you'd have to put your coat on, Mum, and you'd have to put your hat on, and you'd have to have some good wellies because it's going to be maybe cold. When I get to Whitley Bay, I'm waiting to say, see, I've never really understood why God made sand. You do wonder, don't you? Now, that's what I mean by one that rings round. But it's in the context of, we brought you here, are you going to take your shoes off and paddle? That's when I can say, never understood why God made sand. The answer I get is, well, the sea has to be on top of it. Very reasonable. Aye. But you see, you don't know what there is when there's no sea. And they said, oh, the sea has to be there because there has to be another side and this side. Ah, there's another side. And when you're here, that's over there. And when you're over there, that's here. And you're over there before you're born. And you're born when you're 5. And somebody says, no, I don't think you're born when you're 5. I think you're born a bit before then. And we go around these reverberating things. And it isn't nonsense. It's absolutely pure logic. Because, of course, the sea has to be on top of summit. Isn't it? And at Whitley Bay, it's on top of sand, from what you can see. So, if we're looking at how to start something very short. Yes. Now, I was looking at this, and I was looking at what interested you, and you were fairly interested in chamber theatre. And I thought, well, I could do something with literature then, with the children. And I don't mean find literature, I mean we'll make some together. So I was thinking, how can I get into this invisible blanket? Now, I'm going to show you a way I might start for 10 minutes, and you don't have to take it. If you do take it, I know it'll feel funny to you because it'll be a kind of copy. Yeah. But okay, why not for 10 minutes? If you can't think of anything better, do it. Now we're talking about sign then. Right. How everything in the room I'm going to try to make resonant. So you see, I might say, oh, by the way, I was thinking today about stories. And I wondered whether you'd just give me a hand with this. So give me a hand is a way I get the lab going. Give us a hand, you see. And often, you know, children may do a little, teachers don't talk like that, but I do. I think that sort of talk is important. So you see, I might find myself saying, at the blackboard, because I need something to resonate quite quickly, and your room is one that will do it. So you see, I might say, I won't bother rubbing all this off, I'll just do it here. I was was just thinking, when we start our next book, you know, because you do read to the children,
Yes, at
I
the end of the
assume.
day.
Yes. How many stories start with this? I'm going to write it really slowly, and I'll bet you can guess, as soon as you see 3 letters, what I'm going to write. And when you think you know, start saying it for me. Go on, Ian.
Once
Once
upon
upon
a time.
Don't a lot of them start like that? Once upon a time. Have you read stories that start with that? When I've not been reading them to you. I'm, of course, imagining my class now. Now, I don't know how you think you should write. I change my writing a great deal. I'm left-handed, which is a bit of a disadvantage sometimes because it gets the children a bit foikled up. I chose this to print it. Now, in a way, I should have done a capital O, but I decided, no, I won't. I'll sign all the words are the same. Now, I've printed it because I'm thinking, when we come to look back at some of the earlier stories, because they might feel a bit grown up for tales like this now, I don't know, you see, it'll take us back naturally to print like that, you see. I don't know if your children are into joined-up writing. I presume they are by now, you see. So I don't want to do that. But there might be a time when I would resonate, and I can't do this well when I'm talking, where I might do some copperplate. You see, and it takes time to do that. And I'm talking about sign. Now, of course, I introduced the game element because I knew that would get this part started. And I thought, it must mean something, this once upon a time, because so many stories start like that, don't they? And I really can't fathom out, and fathom out is better than think or know. Fathom out is one of those general buzzing about words. What it means. And then I'd have to wait and see whether anybody's putting on that thinking face that is such a worry to me, or whether people are just gawping or thinking it's nearly time to stop and this, that and the other, you see. But I would begin there because I think one of the things I could do with the children to get at this concept is, how did the first people of the world, whoever the children think they are, think? How did they think about air? What did they do when they felt the wind? How would they explain the wind? Because in a way it gets me very directly to the science as a child might. Not because a child is primitive person, primitive human, but because a child may have that flexible openness that the early people must have had, because they had sensation from which to get their myths.
Right.
So you see, I would tend probably to think of beginning from this. Now, I don't know what the children will say, and you can't predict what they'll say, but when they say it, and this board is very awkward, I have to pull it right round. When they say it, it has to be resonated. Now, what do you think you might say? Or you? I'm just thinking, once upon a time. What do they try to make me understand when they start their stories like that? Once upon a time. Now, all this is part of the sign. Now, obviously, I can't rub this off if it mattered to the children earlier. I'll have to make a negotiation. I can rub this off because it's ours, and I think you'll agree we don't need it. Now, you see, when they start telling me, somebody, I don't know whether they would, might say, it means it was very special. It only happened once. So you see, I then have to find once. Yes, only once. I'll have to think of a way. Now, at the moment, the only way I can think of is to say, only once. So I might shade it in a bit more. I don't know, because I haven't got the children here. And somebody else might say, it was so special that they never forgot it. And that's why it's in the story. Yes. So I might say, all right, it's special, and I keep the same kind of writing, never forgotten. And this is what's making that better. The way this is said makes that better. Now, you've 10 minutes gone nearly. But when you look at what they've told you, you will have learned something about the level they're at in considering this. And you'll also learn whether fantasy comes into it or practicality more. You've always got to test for that by looking at. Do they think because it's like that, it'll be dreaming? It'll be fantasy? Or do they think, no, no, it can sound like that, but it can be terribly real when it happens? Now, you see, I would tend to look at that when they'd gone for 5 minutes and say, what have I learned about them? Where will this get me to my next platform? And my next platform is another thing with the word time in, you see. And I've just temporarily forgotten what it is. Can you remember? I was talking about it earlier on. And it was before the dawn of time. So tomorrow, I might say, you were so helpful yesterday, we got that far. It didn't matter if we didn't get far. I thought, I've been thinking about once upon a time, and then I thought, no, there's more. They said, before the dawn of time, there was. Before the dawn of time. I won't write it on you. But this is different. This time is, we're in 1991. You see, I always refer, 1991. I want to see who answers. Let's have a date that takes us back a bit. Now, I don't know what they'll say takes us back a bit. They might say 1990. 1990. Now, that may feel a very long time to them. Yes. Just trying to think how far back I go. I don't want to play guessing games about my age. You see, you get into all this kind of thing. How far back shall we say I go? So they might say 1742. Okay, 1742. So in 1742, I'm just thinking what people knew about then. Now I've introduced another element. Now can you see what I mean by resonating?
Yes.
Now I'm trying to get back to before the dawn of time. Because if I can get this, and this is a much more different journey than that. That's what do you think it means? But this is, how shall it mean to us? So you see, as we go on, I'm wondering what they knew about then. Or what they didn't know about that we know about, you see. So when we get down to 15 whatever, it might take a while, you might wish you'd started an hour sooner because it'll be going that well. I'll maybe turn to things like, I'll bet there's lots of things they thought they knew that we know better. So you're changing knowledge and the questions all the time. Now, I will get into the atmosphere from this. I know I can. Now, at the moment, we won't go any deeper into it than that. But I wanted to show you this side of the brain. All those questions are not what, why, how. It's a negotiation between ponderings on. And it's terribly important. This is the iconic stage or the symbolic stage, according to how much you develop it, which gets the class just ranging about. Okay?
So there's no need in these early stages for there to be any activity necessarily.
You don't need to move the desks. What you move is the attitude. Now, did you feel stared at?
No.
Admittedly, I did say, what do you think, Ian? And I don't say that at this point. I don't draw children out. I listen with my body to who's sticking out and who's pondering and who's gone off and who's sitting back. I don't mind if they're sitting back. It's the end of the day.
It was thinking time.
That's right, it's thinking time, reverberation. Now then we come to the next stage, which seems like it's got, you know, nothing to do with what we're talking about, but it has everything to do with what we're talking about. The first lesson you did was an episode. In that episode, we sat and considered those words, and we've never done that episode ever before, and we'll never do it quite like that again. I mean, you may find it was a useful start for this project, and one day you might use it for a totally different one. Tomorrow was a different episode. Something different happened to us. Now, drama and literature are quite different in this respect. In literature, episodes can be muddled up. You can say meanwhile and move into something else that's happening at the same time. But in drama, one thing that's happening will be related with the attitude we have, the way we enter the situation at this point. So what I've done is I've brought along this story. This is the story of the Good Samaritan that everybody's heard of, and it's so easy when you read a story like this to not realise what a terrible mugging went on there. And, oh, well, you know, people tend to think, oh, well, I know that story, I don't need to listen anymore. And it's one of the problems of literature. If people can't read into it all the time, they skim it, you see. Now, when you're looking at drama and you want to use material like this, and frequently people do go for stories because they think this is the way to get at it, it has to be broken down into episodes. And each episode brings a different kind of experience to the people. So, you see, what we're going to do together is break this very short tale down into how many kinds of different events do you think happened.
Right.
So, see what you think. You tell me where the episodes come and change.
Well, this first one, a man was on his way from Jerusalem down to Jericho. Seems to me to be an episode.
Yes, because it's one kind of experience.
Yes.
And we might be thinking, you see, in the drama, he's got to have a motive. Where is he going? Why is he going? And what's he carrying? And so on. So those motives would all have to be built in to get the deeper structure, right? So there he is. He's on his way, and that's one kind of experience.
The next one is when he fell in with robbers. Is it? That's...
Well, to me it would, because here I am mugging along, there's my mind sorting my life, and suddenly I'm not in control of my life. So falling in among robbers would make a totally different world. And, you know, we read about these all the time, don't we?
Yes. Yeah.
Right, where do you see the next episode?
Who stripped him, beat him, and went off, leaving him half dead. I mean, I think that's a sequence of events, you know, that happen quite quickly, perhaps, but maybe they're different, are they, events?
Well, I quite see what you mean by it does look like the mugging.
Yeah.
But it seems to me, I say then, is stripping the man the same as beating him? Is it the same kind of experience for the people who do it, and is it the same kind of experience for the people to whom it's done? And I see stripping is different than beating.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, it sounds as if we'd be looking at most horrendous things, so of course we've got to find a way to do that. But basically speaking, I see those as two episodes.
So even though they might be quite close together or linked very closely, you look at them as separate episodes.
That's right. And what do you see as the next one?
Oh, went off. I suppose, yes. Well, there's more in went off, leaving him half dead, as I see it now, isn't there, than just that one sequence as the going away, there's leaving.
Went off is them, leaving him is him. So I see those as two episodes.
Yes.
Now, don't worry yet about how on earth we do this.
Yeah.
All we're doing, and this is what we always have to do, we have to say, if the people are going to be expressive of such a moment in a person's life, or our lives, because we're a whole class, how can we penetrate the depth if we're made to rush forward? So what this is doing is teaching you how to get the story dense into experience. So any of you, go on, get your Bibles out. This happens to come from the Good News version. Get your Bibles out and see how many episodes you find in that seemingly very short story. You see, the mouth is so fast, but the meaning is so deep. And there are 5 layers. What is done is what the drama looks like. Why it is done is what the people have to understand who are learning from it. Their investment in it is the next layer down. And the layer below that is, where did you learn that that was a way to behave? And the last layer, the deepest of all, is this how life should be? And that's what we're getting to when we're getting to the depth in drama work. Episodes. Right. Get to it.